Welcome to another episode of Writing on Caffeine, the podcast where you can come along on a journey with a father and daughter as we attempt to write our first novels. I am Jonathan Franzone, and this is my daughter.
I'm Reagan, also Franzone.
Tonight we are recording at my house, our usual location now. So what are you drinking?
I think it's called Winter Spice. It's like an apple herbal tea.
I am drinking the same thing.
It's very good.
I was going to pick a different tea, but I smelled yours and it smelled really good.
It smells like apple oatmeal.
Absolutely does.
It's really good.
It is good. So how's the writing going?
It is going. It's going slowly, but I feel like slowly is better than nothing.
Yes.
So I'm not at a standstill anymore.
I did do some writing, I think 1 or 2 days. So,
The problem is I start writing and then I realize how terrible it is and then I cringe stop.
yeah. I don't do that. I'll do one session and then the next day I get really busy and I don't get back to it. So tonight we're going to talk about dystopian fiction.
Woohoo! This
So-
is my area of expertise.
Yes, so the end of the world. So dystopian fiction is a genre. It's speculative literature that depicts a hypothetical future or alternative society characterized by elements of control, oppression, dehumanization.
So basically the world right now.
Right. It's basically the Biden administration.
Yeah.
So they're typically, they present a dark, disturbing vision of the world, and it's often a cautionary tale about the consequences of unchecked power, technological advancement, environmental degradation, social and political inequalities, that sort of thing.
So once again, the Biden administration.
Yeah, kind of like right now. So the key defining features, we've got 6 that I came up with. You can add if you want to.
Mhm.
I'll start the list. It's the first one is totalitarian or authoritarian governments. So dystopian societies are often controlled by repressive totalitarian regimes that exert extensive control over the lives of the citizens.
I agree with that.
So that's pretty much true of all dystopian. I haven't read a lot of dystopian fiction, but I've watched quite a bit of dystopian movies and TV shows,
Mhm.
and they all seem to center around, unless it's like so bad, the destruction is so bad that it's like just little tiny villages here and there,
Yeah.
like a zombie apocalypse type situation or something.
Yeah. Our second defining feature of dystopian is surveillance and loss of privacy. Pervasive surveillance, both technological and social, is a common theme as governments seek to monitor and control the population.
Yeah. So, hello, iPhone.
You're just getting more depressed the further into this, this podcast we go. We're just describing modern America.
Just describing our lives, right?
Hello, TikTok.
So the third one, dehumanization and conformity. So individuals in dystopian societies often face the erasure of their personal identity and the suppression of individuality with a focus on conformity and the collective.
Mhm.
So this is especially true with dystopian that has communist type themes, because in communism, you basically want just a bunch of worker bees,
Right.
like just cattle that do your work, and then everything belongs to the few people at the top.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in with an example here because
Yeah, go ahead.
it ties in really well. Something that's really interesting about, one of our favorite novels to talk on here about The Hunger Games, which is a very popular dystopian novel. They do have a lot of dehumanization and conformity, but in the beginning, it's kind of selective dehumanization. Like they're dehumanizing the districts, but the capital has like full ability to like be expressive and whatever. However, when they end up in District 13, everybody is conformed. Everybody's equal. And everybody like wears the same outfit. They get these like weird tattoos on their arms that tells them their schedule for the day. And They eat the same thing every day.
Hello, Auschwitz.
Right, exactly. So it's really an interesting parallel because, Katniss is coming from being in the capital
Right,
and experiencing that lavish lifestyle, if only for a little while. And then she gets saved in quotation marks by District 13.
right.
And she's starting to realize she actually hasn't been saved. She's just on the other side of the war, but basically in the same position she was before.
Right, yeah.
So,
Well, the next one actually ties really well into that, so go ahead and read that one. Number
uh,
4.
societal stratification and inequality. Dystopian worlds frequently depict a
Hierarchical.
society structure. Oh gosh, hold on. I can't read. Dystopian worlds frequently depict a hierarchical society structure with stark divisions between the ruling elite and the oppressed masses.
So there again, the capital is the elite.
Hmm.
They're very lavish, and then you have everybody else.
Right.
The funny thing, I was thinking about this one. The funny thing is, a lot of the support that these tyrannical regimes, both made up and especially in the real world, um, they come about as a way of fighting this. So one of Marx's main things was division. You have to, create classes. And so there was the haves and the have nots. And so you get the have nots all stirred and riled up about not having stuff. And then they attack the haves and it creates this class warfare. And that's very much like what you see today is, there's always this call to tax the billionaires and the millionaires and, they have too much stuff, but the people doing that are just stirring up all of the people that don't have a lot, and they're being affected greatly by hyperinflation and that sort of thing.
Right.
Um, but then they end up voting for the people that are actually causing it.
Right. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of unfortunate. Number 5, environmental degradation and resource scarcity. So, dystopian fiction often explores the consequences of environmental destruction, climate change, and the depletion of natural resources, which can lead to societal collapse and further oppression.
Hmm.
Now, this one is a very common theme, but I think it's kind of part of the propaganda of our current age.
Yeah.
So, there's this whole, climate cult, I would call it almost,
Yeah.
that believes that the world's going to end in the next 5 years or 10 years or whenever they say.
Apparently, it's going to end on Monday with
Right.
the solar eclipse.
So the solar eclipse, everything's going to be gone, right? But with what's her name that went over to the World Economic Forums and screamed at everybody,
Oh, Greta
Greta
Thunberg or
something or other,
Thornburg or
Thornburg.
I
I
don't
don't.
know.
Yeah, like it's just this great call that we're bringing about the end of the world, but a lot of the same people pushing that again are the tyrants.
Hmm.
So the people that are just using this to get more money and power.
Yeah.
That's all it is. So
Number 6 is resistance and rebellion. Despite the bleak and controlling nature of dystopian societies, these narratives often feature individuals or groups who resist the oppressive system and fight for personal freedom and autonomy. And
autonomy,
this usually ends up being like a 16-year-old teenage girl
right?
for some reason.
And YA fiction for sure,
That's like the only person that can save the world is this scrawny 16-year-old girl
with a bow and
with
arrow.
a bow and arrow. Like, what?
And of course, if it's going to be a good story, you have to have a rebellion,
Hmm.
right? So it's
Oh,
about
yeah.
the end of the world. It's about tyrants. So you have to have a rebellion.
More on that later about why Divergent stinks.
Right. And you could even argue, I mean, it's not technically dystopian, but things like Mistborn
Hmm.
sort of have a lot of these same themes.
Yeah.
So there's the rebellion and the very repressive society, etc.
Yeah. I think the only reason Mistborn doesn't count as a dystopian is because it takes place on a different planet.
Yeah, it's fantasy.
But if it was like taking place, like it could easily be translated into a dystopian.
Yeah, you just change everything to be modern day or, near future.
Yeah.
Yeah, it totally would be dystopian. By exploring these themes and presenting a nightmarish vision of the future, dystopian literature encourages readers to reflect on the present and consider the potential consequences of societal and environmental developments.
Mhm.
So, a lot of science fiction works this way, and I think dystopian is almost kind of a subcategory of science fiction.
Yeah.
I don't know if it technically is or not, but a lot of it is because it's near future.
Mhm.
Um, but the role of much of science fiction from the very beginning of it has been as a warning. Like, you're looking into the future. What is it going to be if we follow this current trajectory? And you don't want to go there.
Right.
So it's
Except nobody heeds the warnings.
right. So it's almost like what's the Latin phrase reductio ad absurdum.
Mhm.
So you take this current thing and you play it out all the way to the end and it becomes absurd. And so let's try not to do that.
Right. But the thing is, like, at this point, it's so. I feel like people don't take it seriously.
No, they don't at all.
Like, they're just like, oh, a fiction novel. And I'm like, you're not realizing that this is a political commentary. Like,
Right.
that's what The Hunger Games is a political commentary.
Absolutely is. Yeah.
Like, there's no way. Like, this is not a love triangle story. It's a
Yeah.
political commentary
Yes.
with Gale in it. So,
Stupid Gale.
freaking Gale.
Yeah. So, and the last several years, a lot of people were saying that books like 1984 by George Orwell, um, it is a dystopian, but a lot of people were saying, I think the government got it wrong. They're using this as a handbook
Yeah.
for how to do things.
I mean, ever since the start of COVID, I've been saying, like, we're living the Hunger Games right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's gotten pretty bad. All right. So now I figured we could just jump into some examples
Yeah.
of different dystopian and see where it goes.
Hmm. Um,
So you want to jump into any of these or just talk about your top three?
yeah. We could talk about my top three.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I feel like the top three YA dystopian novels are The Hunger Games, The Maze Runner, and Divergent.
Right.
Right before we started the podcast, I looked it up, and Maze Runner was published in 2009. Hunger Games was published in 2010, and Divergent was published in 2011, which is, like I said earlier, very telling because Maze Runner walked so Hunger Games could fly, and
Right.
then Divergent crashed. Like, it was just Maze Runner had really good ideas, but it wasn't played out well enough for it to actually, like, stick and hit home.
Right. The execution wasn't very good.
Right, and then there were a lot of problems with, I feel like, dystopian novels is authors will, especially for YA, I'm specifically speaking about YA dystopian right now. Authors bite off more than they can chew, and they will, like, call all these questions
Hmm.
to light in the books, and then at the end, they never answer them,
Right.
which I feel like is why Hunger Games did so well, because Hunger Games tackled all the problems that were, like, stated in the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Maze Runner didn't. You didn't even get answers at the end of Maze Runner. It's like nobody still knows anything, but we're living on this island now, which was ridiculous. And then Divergent was a love triangle. It, like, that was the main purpose of the
That was the
book.
point.
I don't think that, like, you could have written it in any other genre and it probably would have been better because adding the dystopian aspect to it and raising all these issues with the government and the destruction of the government and how are we going to proceed from this in these major cataclysmic events,
Hmm.
and then not solving any of them and then trying to fix it with the death of a main character just to get some sort of emotional response from a reader. Like, that was a really terrible way to go into that.
That is a bad move.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to kill the main character, there's got to be a huge payoff to do that.
Right. So this is one of the things because I think about this a lot when I'm writing. And it's something that I listened to in a Brandon Sanderson podcast. And he was talking about, It's like the theory, like, if you put a gun on the mantle, somebody has to shoot it
Yes.
by the end of the book, at least. Like,
Correct.
you have to follow through.
Yeah. So you're making promises throughout the beginning usually of the novel. You have to make good on all those promises.
Right, and if you don't, your readers don't trust you anymore,
Right.
which I feel like is what specifically happened in Divergent. Um,
Unless you're Brandon Sanderson and you begin the book with the main character being sacrificed on an altar of old books, and you talk about that through like most of the series and never do it, and then make fun of the fact that you didn't do
Mm.
it.
was that,
Alcatraz
yeah,
versus the evil librarians.
I read that one. Um,
I was a little angry with that one. I was like, come on, man.
ah, yeah, he said, "This isn't the Cosmere, it doesn't matter that much."
Yeah.
Um, so, I don't know, I feel like I could talk about this forever, but
Yeah, that's fun.
so Maze Runner, the plot of the books, which I actually just read recently, I read all 3 of them in, like, a week,
Hmm.
because why not? Um, they are about this kid who has all of his memories wiped, and he's, like, planted into this maze, and they are trying to find a way out. And throughout the series, they escape the maze, but then they find out that because of some, like, massive solar flares, which is the destruction of the world as we know it, right?
Right.
There's been, like, this terrible disease that has been released on the world that's called the flare that basically turns people into, like, weird zombie people.
Hmm.
And the reason that the kids are in the maze is because they are somehow immune to this virus, and there are scientists studying the way their brains work to be
Spoiler alert.
able to, yeah, if you haven't read Maze Runner, sorry. Um, trying to find a cure for the disease.
Right. And say since they have immunity, they're studying them.
Right. So they go through all these, like, hardships, and they're, like, trying to, like, create reactions out of these kids, which is the point of the Scorch trials, is they, like, put the main characters through all these, like, really emotional situations to see how their brain reacts to them.
Do they have like monitors in their brain?
Yeah, they have, like, implants in their
Oh, okay.
brains that, like, monitors them. Um, and so we go through, and, we realize that these people who are studying them aren't really good people. They're trying to find a cure, but it's mostly for selfish reasons, and the rest of the world is suffering, and, like, everything's in turmoil. And these kids go in, and anyway, they end up doing some sort of heist situation to go save a bunch of people, and in the end, spoiler alert again, if you haven't read The Maze Runner, they find out that the virus was released as a form of population control. And
Probably from Wuhan in China.
it's like taking over the world. The problem is these kids jump through some portal, end up on a deserted island, and the book ends.
What?
They never find a cure. The world is just left to zombie apocalypse, and there's no, like, none of the kids get their memories back. The main character was supposedly working with the bad people before he was put into the maze, and then he had his memory wiped, and he never got his memories back.
Hmm.
So we don't get any answers,
Right.
and it's so unsatisfying because they just deposit them in this, like, lush island, and they're like, "Ah, this'll do. We'll just live here forever." And that's it.
That's the end.
That's the end.
That's terrible.
It is terrible because these kids are immune, and nobody's doing anything now because, like, everybody in the government that is, like, supposedly trying to find a cure is dead now. Like, so zombies are just going to take over the world.
Yeah, I guess they assume like the rest of the world will just kind of teeter out and destroy itself and they'll start a new civilization.
They don't
Maybe.
even say that. Like, it's just so unsatisfying.
I should have wrote in an epilogue with them like,
So this is my issue too, because it's supposed to be a trilogy, and then the author came out with 2 prequel novels, about the main characters before they go into the maze when they're working with the bad guys. And then he's apparently written like a spin-off series about years later when their kids like go back to the world and the virus is worse.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, you see, you didn't
Just
answer enough
leaving the door
questions.
open.
You didn't answer enough questions, and now you have to write more novels, and they're probably worse than the original ones because you're just writing them because your fans are so upset that there's no answers. You like
Yeah.
wrote yourself into a hole. So that's the problem with that.
Nice.
I don't even know where to go from there.
And Divergent is just terrible.
Divergent is just terrible because
There's no point.
there's no point. The government is evil. They're experimenting on humans. Nobody cares. Triss just wants to fall in love with Four, and then Triss sacrifices herself for absolutely no reason. And then the book ends.
Yay.
That's the entire synopsis of the Divergent trilogy in like 3 seconds.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah.
So I've got a list of classic dystopian novels, just for infos.
Yeah.
So 1984 by George Orwell. I have not read.
Me neither.
Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I don't know.
I don't know
I
how to
don't know how to
phrase.
say that. By Huxley.
Mhm.
Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Anthem by Ayn Rand, which I actually have read. And We by Yevgeny Zamyatin.
I've not read any of those.
Yeah.
Um,
And I would include, since Anthem's in there, I would include Atlas Shrugged,
yeah.
which I do have under the dystopian books I read.
Um, I feel like The Handmaid's Tale is technically dystopian, but I feel like it's more government propaganda
Oh yeah,
than anything else. Like
totally.
it's just I don't know. That I watched a couple episodes of the show and it got like very visceral reactions out of me and they were like not the kind of reactions that they're trying to get with those kinds of things. Like
Right.
this is manipulation. These things that they're fighting against are not bad things. I mean, some of them are, obviously, but like the generic types of ideals that
Right.
they're fighting against are not ideals to be fought.
Right. Yeah. No surprise there.
Yeah.
So some dystopian books I have read. I've mentioned Atlas Shrugged, but also Ender's Game, which I found on the list of on Goodreads. Um, I guess it is kind of dystopian. I would actually classify it more as military sci-fi.
Hmm.
So it's mostly just about war with aliens,
Right.
which, I mean, I guess you could say the world was kind of at the end. But Ready Player One by Ernest Cline.
Hmm.
Have you heard of this book?
Yes.
It's amazing.
I think you've told me about it
It
before.
is really good. So the world is like very dark and terrible, and people just live in these ghettos, and everybody's hooked into this video game.
Oh yeah, this is when we have to solve the puzzles.
Yes.
Okay, yes, I've heard about it's on my list.
Yes, it's an outstanding book.
Mm.
And the audiobook is really phenomenal. And then Gunslinger, the first Dark Tower series by Stephen King.
I own this book.
The Dark Tower?
Yeah, the
Gunslinger?
Gunslinger. I hate just the first one. I have not read it yet though.
It is a good book. I've actually read the whole series twice. There's some pretty sketch sections in a couple of the books, but the entire series is a wild ride.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
It is crazy.
Oh my
Like
goodness.
it starts out with this cowboy basically who is from the ancestry of like you get the sense of he's like an ancestor of King Arthur in King Arthur's court, but he also remembers that time. So,
Yeah.
but now he's like a cowboy walking through the desert chasing after a sorcerer. And then he gets pulled into portals into like modern
Yeah.
US, but it's really in the past because he's in the far distant future.
Stephen King said, "How wild can I make this book and
Yes.
still make people love it?"
At some point, they end up going to the Emerald City from The Wizard of Oz.
Cute.
Um,
They meet Stephen King.
they meet Stephen King and they have to save his life because if they don't, then they stop existing.
That's wild. Oh my goodness.
It is a wild ride, and it'll probably always stick with me. Just
Yeah.
how unique it is. Some dystopian movies that I've watched. Book of Eli.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of this or watched it?
No.
It is really good. It's with um, I can't think of the actor's name now, but anyway, he's making his way through this just terrible landscape, and there's all these little cities that are, usually run by one tyrant guy,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just surviving. There's cannibals he has to like get away from, and um, the whole point of it is he's taking this book, the Book of Eli. He's salvaging this thing. He's trying to get it to a destination. I won't ruin it for you, but
Yeah.
it's a really good one. I have down any zombie movie. Those are basically
Yeah.
dystopian. World War Z, I thought was of the zombie movies. I think it's a really good one
Mm-hmm.
because it's just not all out gore.
Yeah.
There's actually a decent plot.
Um, The 100 is a dystopian show.
Oh, I've seen this. I haven't watched it, but I've seen the like
Isn't
cover.
Independence Day dystopian?
Independence Day. I don't think I would call that dystopian because the world's pretty normal,
Mm-hmm.
like up into the point where the aliens show up.
Okay.
So I would probably just classify it as like science fiction, alien invasion,
Gotcha.
something like that. Equilibrium. Do you remember watching this when your brother was here? We all sat on the couch and watched it.
Was that the one with the magicians?
No. So Equilibrium came out about the same time as The Matrix, which I also have down. Um, but Equilibrium it's a really silly movie. So it's got Christian Bale in it, and they practice gun kata. It's like a martial arts with guns.
That tickles my brain a little bit, but I must have blocked it out because I don't remember it very well.
Yeah, so the overlords force everybody to take drugs which inhibit emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have these police that go around policing sense crimes.
Mm-hmm.
So you're sensing too much.
Oh, I think I do remember this.
Yeah. So it was kind of fun, but also really goofy.
Uh-huh. Yeah. No, I remember this. I
Yeah.
remember this. Um, I was gonna say something else. The Giver
The Giver,
is a
yeah.
book and a movie.
Book and a movie.
I've seen the movie and I own the book, but I haven't read it.
Yeah, it was a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
And it was a lot to do with corrupted government,
Right.
conformity.
Suppressing truth.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want they don't want the people to know the reality of the world,
Right.
which is another common theme in dystopian, I think,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of happening now. Seems
Yeah.
they don't want you to know the truth.
That's the name of the podcast is We're Living in a Dystopian Novel.
The Blade Runner.
I have not seen that.
It's a movie based on a book by Philip K. Dick called "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" I have not read the book, but I've seen the movie twice, 2 or 3 times. It's really good. It's got what's his name? Harrison, Indiana Jones.
Ford.
Yes, Harrison Ford. That's right. Harrison's the first name. Yeah. Uh, but yeah, that was a really good one.
Yeah.
So as I was preparing the notes for this show, I was thinking like it might actually be quite fun to write a dystopian
Yeah.
story or book. I know I haven't written even a single book yet, but
Maybe
just
next time.
thinking through these themes, and it seems like we would have a lot to say on the matter, considering that we do see a lot of these themes in the world that we live in today.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be very easy to come up with situations where the government is censoring information and
Right.
trying to control the populace, dehumanizing people, um, and then just extend it out a couple years and see where it goes.
Yeah. Honestly. I feel like it would be pretty easy at this point.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I don't know. I feel like the Hunger Games is like the golden standard of dystopian novels for me. I
Yeah.
just feel like it did it so well. I know you haven't read them,
I
but
have not.
you should.
Maybe I will.
They're good.
Better than Twilight?
Way better than Twilight. Way better. It would actually be worth your time. I just feel like they follow things through so well. You know,
Yeah.
the people who save them aren't always good. Um, but there's a balance to be found. And what I really love is that like the characters actually have like lasting effects. The world has lasting effects. It's not like everything just goes back to being better.
Right.
And it's one of those books where I feel like with dystopian novels, when I read them, a lot of the times I'm like really interested because the concept of the first book is really good. And then usually there are trilogies. So like the second and third book is just like war and it's so boring.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't really care.
They don't really know where to go except war.
Right. So in rebellion and taking over the government. And I feel like the Hunger Games kind of weeded through that really well.
Yeah.
Um, along with having the characters actually, you know, be traumatized and exist in a world where, the government has fallen and they're trying to rebuild something new, but, it might not be ideal for still a few more years. Like we're still working on it. We're still fighting through this, even after like the main battle has been won,
Yeah.
which I really enjoyed because it's not going to be like a one time war, like kill the bad guy and everything's fixed.
Right. Yeah.
There's still going to be corrupt people. And sometimes the people who are fighting for something that's good end up being corrupt as well.
Yeah. So it's not like a fairy tale where like you kill the evil witch and then her spell is broken and
Everything goes back to
the entire landscape just turns green automatically and
right.
everybody's happy and
Yeah.
it's just the beginning of a rebuilding
Yeah.
something that might be good
Hmm.
but could also turn bad again.
Right. And I liked seeing like the political workings of it. There's this one of the characters in Hunger Games, his name's Plutarch Heavensby, and he's
Awesome
kind of
name.
like this political figure, and he in the second book is one of the game makers
Hmm.
for the Hunger Games, but he ends up being spoilers, like part of the rebellion, right? And so he goes to District 13 with them. And the whole time, like you don't realize until the end because Katniss is such an unreliable narrator, which is such an interesting concept too for a book like that. That you don't realize he's manipulating President Coin into like making these decisions or pulling this way or doing that thing because he knows that she's not good, but he knows that getting rid of President Snow is like the main issue. And then
Right.
after that, we can take care of everything else.
Right.
And then even after everything goes down, Katniss at the end of the Hunger Games is a war criminal. Like they ship her off to District 12 and hide her because she's like murdered like massive political figures and they can't pardon her,
I can't pardon her.
Yeah. So like Plutarch, he's like sends her a letter and he's like, I can't be seen affiliating with you anymore, but you did the right thing. Good luck. Bye forever. But then like it talks about like in their like little flash forward or whatever, like they're watching him on the TV, like making good like political movements and like steering the country towards something better,
Yeah.
which I think is really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I should read those.
You
Sounds good.
should. They're really good.
All right, so I have not done a whole lot of reading, but what books have you read or finished since last time?
I don't even remember what I had finished since last time. When was the last time we recorded a podcast?
A month ago.
Was that
It was like March 9th.
in the beach?
No, it was here.
This year? I have read a lot of things. I think the last time I'd finished. Okay, so I've read The Maze Runner, The Scorched Trials, The Death Cure, Trust of the Emerald Sea, Zodiac Academy 5, Love Comes Softly, and Zodiac Academy 6.
One
I
of
need
these things is not like the others.
I needed to chuck in a little nostalgia read.
Yeah.
It's so bad. It's a terrible book, but it's really easy to read and it's so simple. And I feel like it has like really good little like morals in there, you
Right.
know.
Love comes softly.
Yeah, like love your kids, plant food, live your life.
Yeah.
Sometimes things are
Be
hard.
good.
Sometimes things are hard, but you know what? God can get us through it.
That's right. That's true.
So, kind of a little.
Well, you're putting me to shame on the reading there. So the last time we recorded, I was basically reading these same 3 books. So Brothers Karamazov, The Druid by Jeff Wheeler, and Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman.
I think the last time we were on a podcast, I was like 7 books behind in my reading goal, and now I'm ahead.
I believe it. I'm steadily falling behind. Yeah. I'm also reading a book I just started. I can't remember the title, but it's by Douglas Wilson.
Mm.
It's about the nation of Israel and like
Yeah.
the theological basis of, do you believe Israel has a history, or is the church the people of God Israel? Or
Right.
and then also I think it gets into anti-Semitism a bit.
Oh, fun.
So that should be fun.
I'm currently reading The Words of Radiance, Brandon Sanderson. I'm
Oh,
about
yeah.
50% through that. The Divine Rivals, which I think I've been reading for a while, which is the like You've Got Mail fantasy retelling.
Right, yeah.
And then I'm reading the second Love Comes Softly book as well, which is called Love's Enduring Promise, which is actually really boring, but and then also Zodiac Academy 7.
Awesome.
I'm going through it, man.
That's a lot of books.
Yeah. I recently got the Kindle Unlimited,
Yeah.
and I've been going through more books that way because I can like read them on Kindle Unlimited at work
Yeah.
and then like just go back to reading my physical books at home.
Oh, interesting.
Because you just pay, it's like $5, and then you can have like all the books on Kindle Unlimited for free.
Right.
And most of the books I'm reading are on Kindle Unlimited, so I just download them and I can read them on my phone on my Kindle.
Cool. Thank you for joining us in this episode of Writing on Caffeine. We hope you'll join us again in 2 weeks. Please subscribe wherever you find podcasts. If you are so inclined, please leave us a review. 5-star reviews are preferable. Be sure to visit the website, writingoncaffeine.com, where you can view the show notes and subscribe to our email list so that you never miss an episode.